Thank you all for coming here on this somber day, this somber time of year for these families. My name is Josh Koskoff, and I'm truly, not only am I honored to represent these families, but I am in such great admiration for them. And luckily, I also have the world's greatest co-counsel with me, and that is Aaron Rogiers. Aaron works at the Guerra firm in San Antonio, and I work at the Koskoff firm in Connecticut. No relation, but we're proud to be here. So this Friday marks the second anniversary, an anniversary of the shooting at Uvalde. And actually, on that terrible day after the shooting, as families rushed to see if their children were safe, whether they were alive at all, whether they were injured, whether they were bleeding, whether they needed attention, families gathered across the hall here who had not heard from their children, wondering, praying, hoping that they would be reunited. For these families standing here, they were the last families standing nearly 2 years ago, and that's why they're standing again here. And consider the bravery of even coming to this place. Mass shootings are a very destructive thing. They destroy families, they destroy communities, they divide communities, they pit people against each other. But there's one thing that mass shootings create. Mass shootings create anniversaries. Mass shootings create anniversaries that are in themselves destructive. April 20th is an anniversary for parents and loved ones of the Columbine shooting. April 16th for the Virginia Tech shooting. July 20th, there's a new anniversary, the Aurora shooting. 12/14/12, an anniversary I know very well, happened in my home state of Connecticut, the Sandy Hook shooting, a new anniversary. June 12th, Pulse, and the families and friends of those people who died. October 1st, all those people killed in the Vegas shooting and injured who have to remember every year an anniversary they never wanted to celebrate. Santa Fe, May 18th, El Paso, August 3rd, Buffalo, May 14th, Highland Park, July 4th, Colorado Springs, November 19th, Uvalde, May 24th. You can say a lot of things about the law enforcement response in this case, and very few of them will be good. But one thing you can't say is that they caused this shooting. You cannot say they caused this shooting. What is enabling these school shooters, or any shooter? What is happening? These were the last lines of defense for these children, but they were failed long before the shooting. They're failed. We're failing children. Let me just mention some things about this the law enforcement response. It was massive, and it was fairly quick. Within minutes, there were upwards of 100 cops there, or cops, law enforcement officers of many different stripes. The city of Uvalde was there. The county was there. The Department of Homeland Security was there. The Border Patrol was there. The state of Texas was there. DPS was there. Marshals were there. DEA agents were there. Literally, if you can name an agency with a law enforcement, they were there. And at the end of the day, there were 376 law enforcements there. And what was this battle that they were fighting in this elementary school? It must have been a massive adversary of great numbers and great strength. But it wasn't. It was a kid, it was an adolescent. An adolescent who was a small, growing adolescent. If he weighed 140 pounds soaking wet, I'd be surprised. 376 at the end of the day to 1. 376 to 1. On paper, it should have been no contest. So what happened? But for 77 minutes, how did this kid hold back 376 heavily armed, trained law enforcement agents? Maybe it just turns out that if a kid has a military weapon, the AR-15, and can get access to it easily, maybe it's just not that simple to stop a kid like that. Of course, they didn't give themselves a chance, these 376 officers. And by the way, let's be clear. Of the 376 officers, not all of them failed to do their job, okay? And there was a collective failure here. Consider that no disciplinary action has been taken, none, against any of these 376 officers. Think about that. One way of looking at that is cover up, right? And there's a lot of that going around. Have you noticed that everybody that talks about this from the government, what state or government, blames everybody else, right? The federal government came in here and they did a extensive investigation, but did they discipline any of their officers? Did they fire any of their officers? They laid blame at the feet of local law enforcement, and let's face it, there's plenty of blame to go around. The state of Texas, what have they done? A lot of talk, a lot of blame. What has the state of Texas done other than prevent these families from getting the information that they so deserve? And in terms of the state of Texas, isn't it something that you could demand for school safety drills and provide almost no financial or other resources to local agencies like Uvalde? Do you think the city of Uvalde has enough money or training or resources? Do you think they can hire the best of the best? As far as the state of Texas is concerned, it sounds like their position is, you're on your own. You're on your own. It's not like the city had nothing set up to deal with a mass shooting at a school. School shootings are so foreseeable in this country, aren't they? They had drills, they had officers who had some training, They had equipment. They just didn't have enough. The burden of protecting children in schools in this country for towns like Uvalde is overwhelming, and it's an impossible burden to meet, even in the best of circumstances. That's how grave this threat is. So how can the state provide such little help and at the same time open the gun barracks to kids like 18-year-old kids and allow them to get AR-15s at the same time? If you want it, that's fine. That's a decision that every state has to make. And at the same time, where's the burden? Where's the burden lying? I mean, you know what? This has done terrible things to this community in addition to these families. So until that real root cause of what's going on is addressed, until the corporate enablers are dealt with who enable this culture and this epidemic, and until those making money off of this start to clean up their act, the best we're going to ever do is a perfectly performed law enforcement response, a Band-Aid that may importantly save lives, but is only the last failure in a long line of them for the children in this country. And it is too late for the children of these families. What do you do in the aftermath of something like this? There's no playbook for that. There's no playbook for the emotions. There's no playbook for the strain. There's no playbook for how a community deals. And that's why I think, and these families know, there have been some massive, massive problems trying to reconcile and reckon with what happened almost 2 years ago. People are in a state of shock. And the town has, with its threadbare budget, has to deal with it. And they have not dealt with it well. The city has not dealt with this well. No, in terms of the accountability, no discipline of any police officers, no demotions, no nothing. Only an absolution. Basically, the city has said, and not alone in saying this, our officers did nothing wrong. If their officers did nothing wrong and the rest of the 376 officers did nothing wrong, then what does that say about the threat? 376 officers doing their job and unable to protect these children for 77 minutes. Maybe it just turns out that when you have good guys with guns, it's not that easy to take out a kid with an AR-15. But, I mean, because they all did their jobs. So what does that tell you about the attitude of state and federal governments and local governments? You're really on your own. But of all the agencies we've talked about, there is the other side of this city, and this city is a good city. I never heard of Uvalde, being from Connecticut, just like you guys never heard of Sandy Hook until the shooting. And that's, of course, mass shootings put cities and townships on the map for the rest of the country that they've never heard of. This is a great place. I can see community here, and I've seen people shake hands and say hi. Up near New York, people don't do that. They greet you in another way. But this is really a genuinely good community. And I guess it's called a city, but to me it looks like a small town. And it's been, in a way, a tale of two cities in terms of their response. If you wrapped up the part of their response, I'm talking about not the law enforcement response, I'm talking about what the city has done to hold those accountable. If you wrap that part up, yeah, it couldn't have been handled in a worse way. No transparency, no clarity, no action. And it's difficult in this city, I hear, because it's so small, to run into people in the street, police officers, who must be living with, let's be honest, many of these officers, if not all, must be living with tremendous guilt and anxiety and trauma. But I've heard it's difficult in a community like this. So that's on the one side. But let's talk about the other side, what this city has done. This city has done something, I would say, that was actually kind of remarkable in the modern era of defensiveness. They approached us, the community of Uvalde approached these families. They said, what can we do? What can we do? We don't have money. We don't have much money. We don't have money of our own. We have a light budget. We can't take care of all your needs. We can't take care of the surgeries he may need. We can't take care of the trauma, of the therapy. We can't do that. We just don't have enough money. But what else can we do? They said, we have some insurance money. You can have all the insurance money. But we don't have a lot of that either. And of course, the last thing these families would ever want to do to their community that they either grew up in and have stayed in and were born here, or they moved here because of the community, the last thing they would want to do was to inflict any financial hardship on their friends and neighbors in this community. Their friends and neighbors didn't let them down. So the opportunity to work with the city, and of course, this was one ray of sunshine in a healing process. And over the course of over a year, we have worked with city attorneys who approached us. The city has engaged a gentleman by the name of Lee Taft on a very unusual but also beautiful process called restorative justice. What is restorative justice? Restorative justice is the type of justice or remedy that does not involve money, but it involves something effectively that demonstrates compassion and respect to those that have been harmed. It's a way for a city like Uvalde to make peace, to extend an open hand, a hug to these families when they can't simply express that from money, through monetary compensation. And that's exactly what the city did, and they've worked hard at it. And we applaud their efforts, particularly those of Clarissa Rodriguez, their remarkable attorney, who has spent, seems like she has more than 24 hours a day, and that's just spent with us on this very challenging process. These families, the city asked these families to meet with this gentleman named Mr. Taft, where they expressed what they were looking for. What would make them feel good? What would make them feel heard and listened to? What would make them feel that their losses were in some way recognized in a valuable way? Valuable not in terms of dollars and cents, but in terms of gestures or efforts. That's restorative justice. And I'd also like to, by the way, commend Bo Joseph, who was also involved in this process from the TML, who was very gracious. So the restorative justice part of this resolution with the city is critically important. And you'll hear that these are some of these may strike you as very modest. And I want to say it's the thought that counts, but there was so much effort that went into this. So first of all, the families do not want to have what happened to them have happened to any other member of this community, or any community in the state of Texas, or any community in the country, as much as they can do anything about it. That's why they are standing here, not because they want to, but because they feel this is the right thing to do, fighting in the name of their children and for the rest of us. And so you'll hear that the restorative justice process has led to things that don't just benefit them, but even more benefit the community. Some of the policy changes that were involved in the restorative justice project include the implementation of a new fitness for duty standard for Uvalde police officers to be developed in coordination with the United States Department of Justice's Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. Another negotiated part of the restorative justice process was a commitment from the Uvalde Police Department to provide enhanced training for current and future officers. A third part of the police improvements that would be part of the restorative justice initiative between the city and the families led to an agreement to coordinate with the families concerning the public safety risk and burden on police due to the prevalence of gun violence. Listen to what I just said, the burden on police. So when you think of restorative, these families have taken steps aggrieved by police failure to do their job to relieve the burden on police due to the prevalence of gun violence. I could not be more proud of them for that. And it's just so remarkable in the midst of their grief. City of Uvalde also committed to things that are meaningful. Establishing May 24th as an annual day of remembrance. Building a memorial and funding a memorial on the plaza and coordinating with the families. Continuing to support and further supporting mental health services for the families and the survivors in the greater Uvalde community, and continuing to work with third-party entities to bring new developments for children and in Uvalde. You know, while I have the microphone, if there is anybody listening or watching that wants to help this community and provide mental health services and some of the massive amount of resources that these families in this community needs, just Google me. Also, if there's a architect or who are the people who make structure? The people who build statues. What do you call those people? Sculptors? Who would build a memorial? An architect, or? I want one of those people too. Is that right? Well, I think it should. Don't you think this should be like an audition? They should have to supply their schematics. Somebody should want to build a memorial here in Uvalde for these people. We'll take any applicants who wants to do that pro bono, because again, there's not enough money in this city. That even trying to honor mass shooting families and those affected by that in a city like Uvalde, and let's face it, most cities and townships in America, you can't do that effectively because there's not enough money. There are other parts to this, and this is restorative justice, and that has to do with things that you never think about. You know, when you have kids and you watch your kids grow up, and one thing you never, ever could possibly think about is that one day you might have to tender to their grave sites, right? You would never imagine that would be some part of being a parent, of tendering to their grave sites. And so part of this restorative justice initiative is simply maintaining regular maintenance of the Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery where these children are buried. creating 2 additional at-large positions on the Cemetery Advisory Board to be filled by members of these families, reimbursing the families for the cost of repairing ornamentation at the victims' grave sites, which the families had previously paid for themselves from donated gravesite funds which the city holds. So there was such a tremendous outpouring from the greater community, from members, citizens of the state of Texas, and from citizens and all over the country. And there were funds that were put in by one gentleman for the cemetery, so that these children's grave sites could be kept up and in a way that was meaningful to the families. And that there was a little bit of let's call it a miscommunication about those funds, and they resolved that. And then continuing to provide updated accounts of all donations the city has received in connection with Robb Elementary shooting and the spending of such funds. This is very much like Sandy Hook and other communities, the outpouring of support from the country. We've all seen it. Money comes in, teddy bears come in, cards come in, but people of goodwill just want to help, right, in the immediate aftermath. Of course, that fades over time pretty quickly, but then it presents these problems when you have to divide the money. And the city, and that's another division that can affect the harmony of a community. Lastly, I just want to, about the resettlement part of this, I just want to say that the monetary part of the deal is, if you recall, that the monetary part of the deal is that it's really in addition to, you think about it as something on the list. It's in addition to the impactful and long-lasting steps that I've outlined. The city of Uvalde has agreed to pay its insurance of $2 million, which is all that there was. The families did not want to, again, just to be clear, these families could have pursued a lawsuit against the city, and there's certainly grounds for a lawsuit. Let's face it, sadly, we all saw what we saw. No, there's not a single person in this room or watching, or even, in town, in any government, or anybody who knows anything about this case and the response knows that it was an inexcusable failure at the end of the day. There's nothing we can do about it now. But instead of suing the city and jeopardizing the finances of anybody, families have accepted just simply the insurance doesn't affect anybody. This is on the settlement end of things, and I should just mention that obviously a case this complicated with so many parts to it, we've been talking a lot about the after part, effectively. What happens in the response, right? We're all talking about the response. That focus accepts that the shooting happened. And that's just a small part of what you look into when you think about what the causes are. So this is simply highlighting that we've settled with the city. There will be lawsuits forthcoming, most immediately against the state of Texas, which has done nothing at all but burden this town before the shooting by not giving them the resources they need, prevented these families from getting the information they need, and then blaming this city as if they didn't have, how many police officers there? 98? As if they had nothing to do, as if they didn't know how to shoot somebody, as if they weren't heavily armed and the most well-trained. blame the least well-trained, least resourced, and least equipped officers for a problem you helped to create. So yes, we are suing the state of Texas. And we're also suing, down the line, we'll be suing the federal government, also heavily trained, equipped. You had over 150 some odd federal officers there who also were there and stood around until one or more breached the room at 77 minutes. Sure, that was a heroic act. It was a heroic act 77 minutes late. But this day is really a day to allow these families to heal and tell the community of Uvalde that they love you, they love living here, and they want to stay here. They want to stay here, and they need you. And when you see them on the street, if you pass them on the street, you know, you don't have to look away, even if you wear a badge. You need each other here, because that's what mass shootings do to a town. Thank you. At this point,
Hello, my name is Javier Cáceres, father of Jackie Cáceres. On the way over here, I saw the sticker, which I see everywhere, is Uvalde Strong. If that was the case, this room should be filled and then some, showing their support. It's been an unbearable 2 years. We all know who took our children's lives, but there was an obvious systemic failure out there on May 24th. The whole world saw that. No amount of money is worth our lives of our children. Justice and accountability has always been my main concern. We've been let down so many times. The time has come to do the right thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't. Yes, of course. Yeah, the school board will be named. You mean the UCISD? Yeah.
Let's go. Sorry, down the road this way. And no
If you don't mind, can you just clarify one more time for all of us here the list of who you plan on suing next? You sort of mentioned about that.
Well, the immediate case will be the state of Texas and the UCISD. Because of quirky legal rules. We won't be naming the government until later. Sorry, I mean it's probably more, when I say state of Texas, I'm really speaking of individual officers. That's how. Did you go to law school? That's a pretty good question. That's how it's done. So it's correct. I shouldn't be saying the individuals. There you go.
Have you guys had any talks with the state at all before?
No. Do you think let's put it this way, the state of Texas, unlike the city picked up the phone, reached out. But these families are members not just of the city, but they're citizens also of the great state of Texas. And no, we haven't heard from them.
Back morning.
Yes, sir. No, that's not what I meant to say. I mean, the city doesn't have. Let's put it this way: is there anybody in this room who thinks that a single life it would be worth $2 million. No, of course not. I mean, lives are priceless. So limitations, unless you, yes, sir, there are limitations.
Have they considered getting rid of those officers? I mean, I know we're way past that, but I mean, that's a huge possibility where they could get rid of those officers and save funds that way. You know, that would be a lot of funds that they'd be saved to the retirement that some of those officers are getting for the remainder of their lifetime.
I think what I've heard. By the way, I'm the lawyer. I didn't lose children there, and all I can do is be an ambassador of what I've been hearing. And I think there's just a tremendous amount of anger at the city for keeping these people on their payroll, if not simply for just demoting some of them. And that is the. Remember, I said this is a tale of two cities. That is still something that these families find inexcusable, and that is the real accountability that is still being lost on this process.
In the front here and then right behind you.
This is mentioned as the DOJ report played a big role in being able to push forward this settlement and these points. Was that the catalyst for getting the talks finally settled, or was there already building and that was kind of the last straw?
No, so the question is whether the DOJ played a significant role or any role in these talks. And no, our process, the process that the city brought to us was underway well before then. In fact, and the DOJ report, although one could criticize, like me, the fact that they spent 500 and some odd pages and really came up with just a list of things that a city could do better to respond, and not a single page on why the shooting happened in the first place. It did help to understand the process better. They spent millions of dollars on that investigation. Another burden of a shooting, the costs to law enforcement after the case and the government and state and local governments. So it was helpful in helping us have a better understanding. And the families really appreciated the way in which that was shared with them. It was very transparent. Well, the county settlement is we're still being worked on some of the details, but it's simply a matter of limitations of insurance and the families, again, not wanting to take money from the city more beyond it's plain and simple. These families are sort of remarkable despite all their losses, in their willingness to accept that and make peace on the lawsuit end of things with the city. Congress has planned? No, not PLACA. Are you talking about qualified immunity? Which there's a lot of immunities. So I think you're talking about the immunity that protects governments from being sued from conduct by law enforcement, the qualified immunity, because there's also immunities that try to protect gun companies and other immunities, but qualified immunity it's just a detail that is going to be fought out in court, and we feel strongly we can beat it. Qualified immunity is an exceptionally strong immunity. So in other words, law enforcement is protected even from some very very bad misconduct at times. But we think that this situation where kids, after all, are required to lock down in their classrooms, their freedom is constrained, So, in this situation, we feel like qualified immunity is not applicable.
Last question over here. Okay.
Sir, I know you talked about, these officers not being able to handle this one team with the gun.
Sure.
Are you planning, and you said that there's more to come, are you planning to going after those gun manufacturers? Are you planning to going after those, I guess, people who make those weapons?
Yeah, I can't comment on what's happening after today. This is just a moment to really explain the resolution with the city. There has been, and appropriately so, such a focus on law enforcement, and I think it is important to remember that that they're the end of the road. This is a road that is well along before they get there. And yeah, thank you.
Excuse me, I got a question. How come, if the sheriff's department has never been mentioned through any of this, he was only 3 minutes away from the shooting, and he didn't even arrive to 20 minutes after, but nobody's going after him. And why is our
Yeah, that's not part. That's not. Thank you, sir. I'm sure it's a valid question, but that's not part of what we're addressing today.
Thanks, everybody.